I remember the day my grandmother's will was read as clearly as if it happened yesterday. The pale November light filtering through the lawyer's office window, the quiet ticking of an antique clock, and the way everyone tried to pretend they weren't waiting to see who got what. It was supposed to be a moment of closure, not curiosity. But in our family, even closure came wrapped in secrets. I'm Anna Whitfield, and this is a story about the kind of inheritance that doesn't come in the form of money, land, or jewels, but in truths buried under silence. If you've ever listened to will stories or inheritance stories where the lawyer reads will documents and family members sit in uneasy anticipation, then you'll understand the heaviness that hung in that room. This was real-life storytelling at its most uncomfortable, the kind where family secrets don't stay sealed for long. The Whitfields weren't exactly close anymore. We used to gather every Sunday when I was a child. Long tables, loud laughter, the smell of my grandma's homemade bread filling the house. But things changed. People changed. Money had a way of carving distance between love and loyalty. When Grandma Evelyn passed away, everyone arrived with a different expression. My Uncle Thomas, always polished and rehearsed, Aunt Miriam, her smile stretched tight, and my cousin Julia, who hadn't spoken to half the family in years. Even the lawyer, Mr. Clark, looked uneasy that morning. We gathered in the town's old brick law office, the one across from the clock tower that had stopped working sometime in the 90s. I sat near the window, notebook in hand, not because I needed to take notes, but because I couldn't trust my hands to stay still. Mr. Clark adjusted his glasses and began to read. His voice had that practiced neutrality lawyers use when words could start a fire. I, Evelyn Grace Whitfield, being of sound mind, do hereby declare this my final will and testament. The first pages were predictable. Items passed to children. Property divided among siblings. Jewelry, books, and keepsakes assigned to specific names. There was no surprise there. Then he paused, and the air seemed to thicken, like everyone had inhaled but forgotten how to exhale. There is an additional sealed envelope to be opened after the reading. It is addressed solely to Anna Whitfield. Every head turned toward me. I remember the sound of paper shifting, the small intake of Aunt Miriam's breath. 1,000 questions bloomed in the silence. Why her? What for? I didn't know what to say. My grandmother and I had always been close, yes, but not in the way that warranted secrecy. I was the youngest of the cousins, the quiet one, the one who listened but rarely spoke. Mr. Clark looked at me. Your grandmother instructed that this letter be given to you personally, Anna. I haven't read its contents. It is for your eyes only. He placed the sealed envelope on the desk between us. My name, written in her delicate handwriting, looked almost fragile. For a long moment, I just stared at it, the weight of curiosity battling guilt. When the reading ended, everyone left with their papers and polite goodbyes. But I stayed behind. Mr. Clark said quietly, "She delivered that envelope to me a week before she passed, said it was her final piece of unfinished business." I swallowed hard. Did she say what it was about? He hesitated. Only that it was meant to heal what money could not. I carried that envelope home like it was made of glass. It felt heavier than it should have, as if it held not paper but something living, something waiting. On the way back, the town felt strangely smaller. The same streets, the same cafe where Grandma used to take me for tea, the same church bells that never quite rang in tune. Everything was ordinary, except me. When I reached home, I set the envelope on my kitchen table and just stared at it. For hours. Finally, as dusk turned the sky to bruised gold, I broke the seal. Inside was a folded letter and a small metal key. The letter read, "My dearest Anna, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and the truth I've carried must go with you. There is something you deserve to know. Something I could not say aloud without tearing this family apart. This key belongs to a safety deposit box at Holloway Bank. Inside you will find the confession that explains what truly happened the year the inheritance changed. It will tell you who betrayed us, and why." The handwriting trembled slightly, as though she'd written it through tears. I read it again and again. By the third time, my hands were shaking. My grandmother's words weren't just instructions, they were an echo from the grave, whispering that everything I believed about our family was built on a lie. That night, sleep refused to come. I kept hearing her voice, gentle, patient, but laced with regret. And every time I closed my eyes, I saw the key glinting faintly on the table, daring me to follow the truth she had buried. I knew what tomorrow would bring. Questions, confrontations, maybe even chaos. But some stories, some hidden family truths, don't stay buried forever. They rise when the will is read, and they change everything. The next morning I woke before sunrise. The envelope and the key still sat on the table, untouched since last night, like a dare I hadn't yet accepted. The words from Grandma Evelyn's letter echoed in my mind, the confession that explains what truly happened the year the inheritance changed. I wasn't sure if I was ready to hear it, but curiosity has a way of outpacing fear. By 9 a.m., I was standing inside Holloway Bank, a small red brick building at the edge of our small town, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone else's business. The teller recognized my last name immediately. Whitfield, she said softly, her tone cautious. We were told you might come one day. She led me to a back room lined with safety deposit boxes, each one a silent witness to its owner's secrets. I turned the key, and with a metallic click, the box slid out. Inside was a single envelope, thicker than the one before, labeled in her familiar handwriting, "To be read only, by Anna Whitfield, when you are ready." My heart pounded. It felt less like opening a letter and more like unlocking a buried truth that had waited years for light. I sat at the small wooden table, unfolded the letter, and began to read. My dearest Anna, you were too young to remember, but 15 years ago, our family nearly broke apart over my husband's estate. The will you all know was not the original. The truth is, your Uncle Thomas changed it. He found a way to manipulate the lawyer after your grandfather's stroke, convincing him that a revision was needed. The property that was meant to be divided fairly was instead funneled mostly to him and Miriam. I discovered it too late, and the lawyer who helped cover it up, Mr. Clark's predecessor, confessed to me before he passed. I could have exposed them then, but doing so would have destroyed what little peace our family had left. So I stayed silent. Until now. I felt the words sink in, slow and heavy. Uncle Thomas, the man who always played the part of the respectable patriarch, had betrayed his own family, and Grandma had known all along. But Anna, the letter continued, there is something even he doesn't know. I kept one piece of evidence, the original will, hidden in the old Whitfield house, behind the grandfather clock in the study. You must decide whether the truth should finally come out. I froze. It wasn't just a letter anymore. It was a confession and a map, guiding me straight into a storm that could tear the family apart again. All those years of polite smiles at family dinners, the tension I'd felt without understanding, it all made sense now. Every silence was an echo of guilt. I left the bank in a daze, the letter clutched tightly in my hand. Outside, the small-town streets looked unchanged, but I wasn't the same person who'd walked in. The hidden family truth had shifted something deep in me. That afternoon, I drove straight to the old Whitfield estate, the one that had stood empty since Grandma moved into assisted care. The air inside was thick with dust and memory. Her scent, lavender and paper, still lingered faintly in the halls. I walked to the study. The grandfather clock stood there, still ticking softly, impossibly alive. I reached behind it, fingers trembling, until they brushed against something rough and folded. A small envelope, yellowed, brittle, sealed. It was labeled simply, "The Real Will." I held it for a long moment before opening it. Inside were several pages, each marked and notarized. The signatures were unmistakable, my grandfather's, my grandmother's, and the date, 2 weeks before his stroke. The distribution was clear and fair. The estate was meant to be shared equally among the family, including my mother, who had died believing her portion was taken by fate, not fraud. I sank to the floor. It wasn't just about property or inheritance anymore. It was about betrayal, a betrayal that had rewritten our family's history. As the clock ticked above me, I realized what my grandmother had truly left me. Not money, not land, but a choice. To protect the family's illusion, or expose the truth that could finally set things right. And the more I stared at that will, the clearer it became. Silence was no longer peace. It was complicity. I drove home as the sun dipped behind the hills, the letter and the real will hidden in my bag. That night I couldn't stop hearing her words, "You must decide whether the truth should finally come out." Tomorrow, the decision would no longer be theoretical, because I planned to confront Uncle Thomas. The morning I decided to confront Uncle Thomas, the sky felt strangely still, like the world itself was holding its breath. I parked outside his home, a sprawling white house at the edge of town that had once belonged to my grandparents. It was supposed to have been shared, but after the revision of the inheritance, he'd become its sole owner. As I walked up the stone path, I caught my reflection in the window, calm on the outside, but trembling underneath. He opened the door before I could knock. "Anna," he said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Didn't expect to see you this early. Everything all right?" His tone was light, casual, but there was a flicker of tension behind it. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. The living room still looked the same. Family photos, the heavy drapes, the faint scent of polished wood. It was all perfectly arranged, as if nothing ugly had ever happened here. I set the letter and the envelope on the table between us. "I found this," I said. For a moment, he didn't react. Then his eyes moved from my face to the papers. The color drained from his cheeks. "What? What is this?" "You already know," I said quietly. "It's the original will. The one you replaced." He exhaled sharply, then laughed. Short, nervous, almost childlike. "That was a long time ago. Your grandmother, she didn't understand what your grandfather wanted. No," I interrupted. "You understood exactly what you were doing. You took what wasn't yours, and you made everyone else live with that lie. My mother died thinking she was forgotten." His face twisted, anger flashing for a moment before guilt softened it again. "You think it was easy?" he snapped. "You think I wanted to do that?" He was dying, Anna. And Miriam, she needed the money for her surgery. If I hadn't changed it, she wouldn't have survived. I made a choice. I stared at him, the weight of those words sinking in. It was always about survival, never fairness. Still, the truth was the truth. "And what about Grandma?" I asked. "Did she know?" He looked down. "She found out. I begged her to stay quiet. She agreed, as long as I took care of everyone after she was gone." I felt tears sting my eyes. "But you didn't. You kept it." Silence filled the room, thick, suffocating. Outside, wind rustled through the trees, the only sound in the world that felt alive. Then I did something I hadn't planned. I took out my phone and placed it on the table. The screen showed a recording. My grandmother's voice, trembling but clear. "If you're hearing this, it means Anna has found the will. The truth cannot stay hidden forever." Uncle Thomas froze. His hand trembled as he listened, every word tearing through the calm facade he'd built over decades. By the time it ended, his face was pale. He sank into the chair, defeated. "You recorded her?" he whispered. "She recorded herself," I said. "She wanted the truth to be heard. One way or another." He leaned back, covering his face with his hands. For a long time, neither of us spoke. When he finally looked at me, his eyes were red. "What are you going to do with it?" he asked. It was a simple question, but it carried generations of silence, guilt, and unfinished grief. In that moment, I realized exposing the truth wouldn't just destroy him, it would destroy all of us. I thought of my grandmother's last words. "You must decide whether the truth should finally come out." There was no perfect answer, only consequence. That night, I went back to Mr. Clark, the family lawyer. He had handled the revised will years ago, but this time I brought both documents. When he saw the original, his eyes widened. "This changes everything," he murmured. "The estate, the transfers, even the holdings." "I don't want to reopen the case," I said. He looked confused. "Then why bring it here?" "I just need it kept safe, with the record of what really happened, so that one day if someone asks, the truth is there." He nodded slowly, understanding more than I said aloud. Weeks passed. The town went on with its routines, market days, quiet evenings, gossip whispered behind coffee cups. Our family never spoke about the will again, but something had shifted. Uncle Thomas began selling off portions of his land, donating most of it anonymously. Miriam started a scholarship fund in my mother's name. They never admitted why. They didn't need to. The truth had already done its work. Sometimes in the quiet hours of night, I still think about the weight of that letter, how it carried not just secrets, but choice. It taught me that inheritance isn't just about property. It's about the stories we leave behind, the truths we bury, and the courage it takes to unearth them. And maybe forgiveness doesn't erase betrayal. Maybe it simply allows us to walk forward, carrying the truth instead of hiding from it. When people ask me now why I tell these kinds of stories, the will stories, the inheritance stories, the hidden family truth, I tell them this: because every lawyer reads Will Session, every grandma's will revelation, every quiet confession reminds us of something real, that no fortune is ever free of the past, and every legacy carries a heartbeat. This was mine, and it led not to riches, but to understanding. Thank you for watching this story until the end. If you found it meaningful, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell icon so you never miss an update. Your support helps us continue bringing powerful, real stories from around the world.